Hello there, it's Jay here from Jay's Vintage Junk, and today we're back on the Famicom repair, and this is the working board I've got here. And what I've done is I have taken out this SRAM here and I've put it in a socket. And the reason I've done that is I was watching a couple of Gadget UK's Famicom videos again, and a comment that he made on my previous video, that the fact that it's just giving like an odd coloured screen could be perhaps a video RAM fault. I think that's the video RAM, this one, the one that's closest to the PPU. I'm not 100% sure though. So what I thought I would do is socket up one of the SRAMs on the working board, which, like I said, which I've done there. And it's important I've done it on this one there, because if you was to have done it on that one there and put a socket there, there may be chances that it would not fit back in the case because of where some of the plastics run. So I've socketed up that one. It should be possible to socket them two up as well if need be. But we'll start with the SRAM there. So far this is what I've done, and that was an absolute a bugger to get out. I don't know whether all these Famicoms are like that, but I really struggled to desolder that. I actually did lose one little through hole off the board. It come out with the chip, and I was being incredibly careful. But fortunately, I could still make contact. I could still solder the. I've actually just used a bit of inline strip like that because I didn't have any suitable sockets. But I used two pieces of that in there, like I said, so I can actually remove that SRAM, and I can test the two SRAMs off this board. So that's the next thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to take off these two SRAM ICs there, and I will try them on the working Famicom board, and we'll see whether that proves which of these are faulty. I think the next one to try after that is most likely the PPU, but obviously I'll try the SRAMs first because they will be easier to remove than that and that are, obviously. So this is the way I, bear in mind, like I said, I did struggle somewhat with the previous one. This is the approach that I'm going to go to remove these ICs. Like, just make sure we've got the correct IC. Yeah, it's that there that we're looking at. So first things first is we're going to add some fresh solder, seeing that this is this solder is quite old. I think this is the 83 board. Yes, this is the 83 board, so you know, this solder is getting on somewhat, and adding a little bit of new fresh solder does certainly help to get the ICs out. One thing I noticed straight away is they've actually bent over that pin and that pin, so whoever was the assembler on this like bending the pins over to make life easier. So I presume this was probably hand assembled. Let's add some new solder anyway to all these solder points. Just like that. Put on that one, and then go back down this side. There we go. So now we've got some fresh solder on there. We go in with the solder sucker, and it's just a case of heating the pin up, bringing the solder sucker in, and suck away. And so you won't necessarily always get it on the first attempt. Sometimes you need to have a couple of attempts at it. Most of these seem to be coming out quite easily, actually. So basically it's just a case of going all the way down like that and then all the way up there, and moving as much solder as we can. In fact, I'll pause the video now and we'll come back when we've got all this solder off. Right, okay, we're back, and I don't know if you can see here. I don't know if you can see this very well. Let's try switching this over into. I don't know if you can see very well there, but we've taken all the solder away. But obviously the pins are still held in place by the tiny little bit of solder that's left. But on both the SRAM chips, we've sucked the majority of the solder away. So what we need to do next is, well, this is how I like to do it when they're being really stubborn, like, well, the last one was, and I'm expecting this one to be just as stubborn, is I take some solder wick. This is at this point. I just cut myself a little piece off, like that, and then this is liquid flux, and all I like to do, this just really does help get the IC out. If I just apply a little bit of liquid flux, and you're applying it down the outside of the legs, where they're still held on to the board slightly. And we just take a little bit more. Now this solder braid is already meant to be coated with a flux, but I just like to add a little bit more, just a little bit of the liquid flux onto the solder braid as well, like that. It really does help. And if we get the iron, and all we're going to do, get a nice clean iron bit. If we take the solder braid and we just run it down the outside of the legs that we've just desoldered, and we just pull it across like that. It's nice and gentle. Just keep going. Make sure you don't snag it like I've just done. Oops. Come off. And if you'll see, it's just helped just free up all them legs. It's just took an extra little bit more of the solder which is holding them off. We'll just do that again on the other side. So we just bring the solder wick in, and we just want to try and wick up some of the excess solder which is still holding them pins in the holes. You can see it's coming off onto the solder braid like that. If we just go around onto these bottom ones as well and do the same. So sometimes you don't have to do this, but these, well, the other Famicom board, it was a right pain to get that SRAM out of there, so I'm not taking any chances on this one. And so this approach does help. You can actually see it wicking the solder away from the pins actually as you do this. Don't be able to see that on camera, but I can actually see it with my own eyes. Well, you can see the amount that it's actually wicked up there. It's quite a considerable amount. I think we'll just do this side as well. I think can we get away with using this one again? Yeah, if we turn it round. Just use that unused bit there. Just go in. See how much we can mop up of the old solder. Like I said, any we can take off will help us get these SRAM out without damaging them, and that's the aim of the game, is to get them out without doing any damage to the actual IC itself. I mean, that's secondary really, because we don't know if they work, but we don't want to do any damage to the board. Right, let's try that a little bit there. There's a little bit, as you can see, which is holding it. And there, just suck that up. Right, next. Now we've got as much of the solder away as we actually can. If we take some pliers like this, and we just want to whittle the legs just ever so gently. In fact, I've got a really cool tool I do this with. and that's this here. What this actually is it's a Apple Mac Classic opening device, but it is brilliant for whittling legs on PCBs like this. You can just clip on them and just give them a gentle little tweak to break them free. You can't tweak them too much because it's sprung loads and it'll open up. The other thing I find this really handy for is straightening legs on ICs, because you can just go along it with them, and it really does help to free up stuck, bent IC legs. Like I said, it does help to free up these pins. We'll go along this lot as well. You can actually hear them clicking and clacking a little bit as you do that. And if we have a look, these are going to be about as much of a pain as they were on the other board. You can see there's still lots of solder up in this bit round there that we will need to get off, and we can do exactly the same as we've just done before with the solder braid. So if we take a little bit of liquid flux, and this is relying on the wicking action of solder, that we can get it to wick up the solder braid and actually come away from the pins of the ICs we want to remove. We'll add a little bit more there. So it doesn't matter how much flux you use, because you can always get rid of it and when you've finished. So we've added a little bit of flux around that. We'll cut off another piece of solder braid. Some people use it off the reel, but I always prefer just to cut it into little strips. I much prefer working on it in little strips than in off the reel. Right, let's have a look here now. Add some to the solder braid, like that. And we'll just come in here and we'll see if we can suck some of this excess solder up. Oops, we've got it stuck there. Yeah, and that's it's actually taken quite a lot of the solder out from in there. I think in fact we'll do another pass, because they are really well soldered in. That's looking much better, and we'll just do the same on this side here. Just come in with the solder braid and suck up as much of the excess solder as we can, like that. And let's have a little inspection. That's looking much better, but I think we can just get a little bit more off this side. Let's go. In fact, we'll have another piece of solder braid, and we'll add a little bit more flux, I think. So let's go put a little bit more flux along there, and cut ourselves another piece of solder braid. So we can get it out. There we are. I think I need to order some more solder braid. I'm running rather low. Again, we'll just add a little bit of flux to that solder braid to make it super absorbent. And we will go back in and we will redo this side. Like I said, the other side is looking fairly clear now, but this side we can just go and nearly there. There we go. I think we've got it. Right, now let's see whether we can get that IC out. We'll just check the other side again, make sure that's still free. Right, let's just go along these pins and make sure they're absolutely happy and free. Oops. That's free, that's free, that's free. Oh, that one I think was giving another quick suck. I think with heating it up from the other side, we've got a bit of extra solder flown down. There we are. Let's try this one. Right, and that one looks a little bit like it might still be stuck. There we go. That's one thing you can do if you heat them up with a solder braid. Unfortunately, what you can do is get the backside to flow down a little bit if there's a bit of solder and reattach itself. But these are all feeling quite nice and free. They're all whittling. Let's go along this side again. Just make 100% sure that they're 100% free. And then we can have a go at getting the IC to come off. In fact, what we can even do quite nicely with this thing is on this side is we just give it a little twist like that. See, make sure it's 100% free, and then we can just give it a little try with a tool. Make sure it's going to lift. No, that's actually feeling like it may still be stuck down. Yep, there's no well, that side there's obviously free, but there's something on this side here still holding it. So what we can do, if we just go along with the probe, we can just give each pin a push from this side and make sure it is absolutely free. Which most of them appear to be. Oops. You do have to be careful doing this, obviously. If you're too heavy-handed, you risk scratching the board or damaging it. But when you've done this for a while, you kind of get a feeling what's too much force and what's acceptable. That side feels actually quite nice and free now. So let's try back on this side. So you see people just whip these chips out in seconds, and it's not always like that. Sometimes you can have ones which give a real fight, and these are in that category. These ones are putting a bit of a fight up. That's still holding on. In fact, join me back when I've finally got this IC out, so we'll see you again in a... Right, okay, there we go, they're out. Right, that was not as easy as I've had in the past. Like I said, I struggled on the other board as well. That one came out no problem at all. That one, however, I really did struggle with. I did lift one of the tracers. Fortunately, I managed to get it back before it did any damage. It's not actually ripped out, it just come loose. So I managed to push it back down to the board and clean round it, and it should still be okay. But we'll put this to one side for a second, and we will get out the working board, and we will test these SRAMs and see whether they see whether they are part of the problem or not. So we'll just get some of this crud off my workbench. We will bring in the test NES. We will switch the monitor on because I switched that off earlier. Now we'll just pan you up so you can see the screen as well as what we are doing. And I've unplugged that, so I need to unplug that and I need to plug that back in. Right, that's powered that up. That should be my monitor. You can see that, yes, good. Just clear some of this. We'll move the tools. Put them on that side. We'll get this solder residue out the way as well because we don't want to short anything out on that. And get that back into shot where you can see it. Right, so if we switch the display on, switch power on, and there we go, we can see it's working. You can see that on the screen, yes. We've got the 198 in one cartridge in there. So we'll switch that off. And we will remove the SRAM that we know works from this board, which we've already put a socket in for. Very gently take that out. And we'll put that to one side. And we will get the first of the SRAMs that we have took off the suspect board. Now the pins are a little bent on that, so I will get my my improvised pen straightener and I just put them on like that and give them a little bend. And that is all it needs, just to straighten the pins up and make them go in the socket a bit easier. So I just put them in and give them a little twist, just like that. And that should now fit a little bit easier. So we put that in. We've got a bent pin, yes we have. Just straighten that pin up slightly. That's more like it. Let's try that again. Does that line up this time? There we are. So that's suspect IC number 1 in this Famicom, and let's see what happens. Switch on. And that one works. So let's switch off again. And we will try the other one. Again, I think we'll just use my little pin straightener. Just put the pins in there and give it a quick, just to make sure that they're all nice and straight again. And again, that's just a little bit bent on that side there where I levered it out of the board. Now let's give that a try. Oh, in you go. There we are. And that one is now in the board. Let's give this a try again. And it works. There won't seem to be any more degradation on the image, so people might have thought that was a little bit of a fruitless thing to do, but well, at least we have proved that there is nothing wrong with the SRAM. So that's one of the ICs ruled out. Just for instance, let's just see what it comes up with no SRAM in there. And there we go. So that's what we get when that SRAM's removed. I'm guessing, is that SRAM something to do with video then? So you know, all we've got is, well, it's in colour, but it's a corrupted video signal. Interesting. Anyway, we'll stick this one back in this board. Let's give that a quick test again. And there we go, we're back to how it should look. So yeah, so at least we have now proved that the fault on this one is nothing. Oops. The fault on this one is nothing to do with the SRAM, so we can clean this board up and we can stick them two SRAM back on there. And I suppose the next thing really to look at is going to be the PPU there. But that's going to be for another video, because I've got other things to do for this evening, being the 4th of November. So I'm going to leave this here for now. So thanks for watching, and goodbye.